All right, Georgia Tech and Georgia. It's another
maybe not fly over, but
get to the 40s. That's all we need. Think about that. All it needs to do is hit the 40s, and it goes over the total. All right, we got Georgia 19.5-point home favorites against Georgia Tech 53 being the total in this game. Georgia, wow, everything broke right for Georgia last week with some of those SEC upset losses by Ole Miss and Alabama. They're very much alive again, still in the playoff mix in the as well. No doubt about that. And certainly that was a great sign for them. No question about that. Obviously, you look at Georgia going into this game here against Georgia Tech with everything, all that chaos last week, all that craziness with Ole Miss and Alabama going down. In the process, Georgia clinches their spot in the SEC championship game. And remember, all these power conference championship games, they're like that quote-unquote NCAA basketball tournament version, football version of an auto bid into the playoff. So if you win the SEC championship, you're in the playoff. So really, Georgia, all they have to do is they could still get in if they don't win that game, but they obviously assure themselves they're in the playoff if they win the SEC championship game. They are in that SEC championship game now for sure, where they will await the winner of Texas and Texas A&M that are essentially playing a play-in game to see who faces Georgia in the SEC championship game. But this is not a spot I'm looking to lay it with Georgia because they know now they're in the SEC championship game. Now, I don't think it would behoove them to lose to Georgia Tech, but we're not asking them to lose to Georgia Tech. We're asking Georgia to win by 20 or more, and they have not been a good bigger favorite all year long. We continue to talk about this. Hell, even UMass covered the spread last week. Georgia was laying 42.5. They won by 38 against UMass. UMass actually moved the ball a little bit in that game against the Georgia Tech. Against the UMass actually moved the ball against that Georgia defense. Georgia Tech off the 30-29 win, comeback variety against NC State. Again, not a great favorite, Georgia Tech, but now they're in the role we like them in. Haynes King's clearly compromised and banged up and battling injuries. Aaron Philo had to take over at the quarterback spot. He actually played okay. He can run with the ball. He's kind of like a miniature version of Haynes King, a duplicate, if you will. Very similar. Can throw. He can run. They run the quarterback a lot, Georgia Tech. And remember, last year, it's not only Georgia Tech in their best role as an underdog. This is where they beat Miami a couple weeks ago outright as a dog. But last year, head-to-head, Georgia only won by 8. 31-23. So it was a very competitive game, and Georgia Tech is a huge dog, covered wire to wire, only lost by 8. So for me in this game, C-Mac, it's Georgia Tech or pass, plus 19.5. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, does anybody want to lay points? I mean, especially in this rivalry, even with Georgia at home with this team all year long. And last week, they kind of were up 16-7 through 3. And then just kind of gave it up, and NC State came roaring back at 22 points there in the fourth. A lot of points there late in that game. And the game got over in the last 4 minutes or so. They gave up a ton of yards on the ground, though, to Georgia Tech, the defense. I mean, NC State, I think, had around 250.
Yeah.
On the ground. Yeah, they got ripped there, but there's some years where these games have been dominated by Georgia in the past, but man, it's tough to take, even with, Haynes King probably out with, the problems he's been dealing with his shoulder, that they just kind of hang around in this one. So nothing showed me really Georgia. Better team, of course. They need to win. They have a stylish 50-7 win in them, possibly. I worry about that. But a rivalry game, I think almost 3 touchdowns. You got to lean here to Georgia Tech.